Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, fellow colleagues, students, and community members. My name is Alma Flores. I use pronouns she, her, and ella, and I'm an assistant professor here at Sac State in the Undergraduate Studies and Education Department. We're gathered here today for the Advancing Equity in Higher Education from the Margins keynote and panel presentation. This event is sponsored by the Center on Race, Immigration, and Social Justice, CRISJ, as well as the Chicanx Latinx Faculty and Staff Association, and the California Faculty Association, CFA. As a proud member of all three of these groups, I'm really honored to be facilitating the keynote portion of the event today. Before introducing Dr. Mary Romero, who will be giving the keynote address, I'd like to take a moment to just read an Indigenous Land and Labor Acknowledgement. Yesterday, we celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day, but it should be noted that as long as we are on stolen land, every day is Indigenous Peoples Day. Today and every day, we express gratitude to the Nisenan, Maidu, Miwok, and Patwin people, who are the traditional stewards of these lands on which we live, work, and learn on. I want to take a moment to encourage everyone to share whose land you are on today. And I also want to encourage all of us to donate and support Indigenous organizations. If you want to go ahead and do that, you can put it in the chat and share with us whose land you are on. As a proud CFA union member, I also want to recognize that much of the economic progress and development in the United States has resulted from enslaved African labor and the underpaid and exploited labor from immigrants. We honor the labor and resistance of these ancestors, and I especially want to highlight the Sac State service workers, most who are people of color. As a daughter of immigrants, their labor and presence never goes unnoticed for me. Thank you for the work that you do. I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Mary Romero. Dr. Romero is Professor of Justice Studies and Social Inquiry at Arizona State University, an affiliate of Women and Gender Studies, Asian Pacific American Studies, and African American Studies. Dr. Romero's lifetime of scholarship, teaching, mentorship, and service has focused on inclusivity, equity, and social justice. I actually first learned about Dr. Romero's work through her very well-known book, Made in the USA. At the time, I was actually working with Latina doctoral students whose mothers were nannies, caretakers, or housekeepers. And her book really helped me tell their story through an intersectional and humanizing framework. I want to thank her for her scholarship. Since the publication of that book, she's continued a prolific scholarly career incorporating previously excluded voices and experiences of women and men of color, and contributing to cutting-edge theoretical interventions. Dr. Romero was among the first to utilize the theoretical tools of critical race theory and Lat-Crit in sociology. In 1998, she published the manuscript, The Department is Very Old, Very White, and Very Conservative in the Harvard Educational Review. The piece examined racism, classism, ageism, and conservative political dominance in sociology departments, something I'm sure we all can relate to. Dr. Romero, thank you for being here with us today and for your very fierce commitment to social justice. I look forward to learning from you today.
I want to thank you for inviting me to serve as a keynote for this forum on education and equity. I want to begin by congratulating you on the creation of the Center on Race, Immigration, and Social Justice. In a short time, you have created a very impressive and informative website. Before discussing equity, I want to address the context in which we are teaching, researching, and doing service. This is a corporate university. I will draw from my experiences at Arizona State University. Okay. The neoliberal project is completely changing higher structures and function, and I'll discuss two ways. During all previous periods of higher education had been considered for social embetterment. Under the neoliberal regime, education was redefined as an individual benefit. State universities transformed into corporations in a market competing for customers with other similar corporations. The cost of the university was to be repaid in future job opportunities and higher salary. Government support for higher education changed from grants and scholarships to government-backed loans. The amount of debt held by students or their parents reached $1.2 trillion in 2014, about $25,000 per student. And obviously this has increased over the last 7 years. Providing federally backed student loans specified that education debt cannot be discharged by bankruptcy. If one fails on hard times, you can discharge debt of cars or credit cards by declaring bankruptcy and starting over. However, students' debt has skyrocketed. President Crow proclaimed that the Arizona State University was the new American university. With more than 100,000 students, it is a forefront of neoliberalism. State universities began building endowments like the ones used by private universities. They gave large donors power over some university policies. For example, wealth capitalists Mary Lou and Ira Fulton gave ASU $100 million in 2005. Gifts often come with strings attached. The graduate faculty of education had composed of neoliberal reforms in Arizona public schools. Fulton's money was used to remove troublesome faculty by disestablishing the College of Education and creating the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. The logo for the new Teachers College resembles MasterCard. Not by accident, ASU has entered into many deals with corporations, including creating ASU credit cards. Walmart on campus occupies the ground floor of the student housing complex run by contractors. A recent corporate deal provided low-wage workers at the coffee giant Starbucks with free tuition to attend ASU, but only online. Academics worry about the effect of donors on academic freedom. After this map was made, the Charles Koch Foundation gave ASU $5 million to fund laissez-faire capitalism centers at the W.P. Carey Business School. The Ag School in Tucson, U of A, had already received their Koch money. The neoliberal university developed new ways to save while increasing production. Staff cuts came quickly. Faculty was a little bit slower because of tenure, but it too is going. Universities require a large staff, building, grounds, dorms, and food services. As state funding decreased, ASU outsourced most of these jobs to private contractors, and in the process, lowered wages and eliminated benefits. What were once moderately well-paid state jobs with health care and retirement benefits became low-wage and sometimes part-time jobs. Part of the neoliberalism is what George Ritzer entitled McDonaldization. In the McDonaldization university, Students do the work that secretaries and registrars used to do. An important McDonaldization function is to remove mid-level employees so just bosses and workers remain. One highly paid professor designs the course, including video modules, reading assignments, tests, and requirements. More than 3/4 of the US teaching positions are filled with contract labor, some PhDs often working for $3,000 or $4,000 per class. Cost cutting was not enough. Universities are also in competition for students and create brands to attract customers and build loyalty. ASU claims to offer a better return on investment than other universities. On the ASU website, one is told that 8 design aspirations guide ASU's transformation. This is a McDonaldization thinking. Make the ordinary sound extraordinary. After all, what university doesn't enable student success or conduct use-inspired research? Remember Extension Service? Selling college is like selling soap. All marketing is the same. ASU's brand captures how the organization wants to be perceived. But the brand has contradictions. ASU wants to be known for scholarship, though the Times on Higher Education ranks us at 189th. But many customers come to party, and some are ranking insignificant. So ASU licensed its maroon and gold brand to Tempe 12, which uses cheesecake and a lot of white girls to get the message across. When you turn branding over to Madison Avenue, there can be some embarrassing stereotypes, as can be seen in these photographs. ASU branded a number of transdisciplinary schools. Among these are strange bedfellows. For instance, the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies. But a short walk on campus reveals the brand new business school and the rundown, partly condemned social sciences building. Departmental corrections with professional associations are weakened, which might interject the matters of promotion and tenure on research ethics. From the ancient origins of the late 20th century of the governance of the university was in the hands of the faculty. A professor could move up to a dean for a while and then return to their department. This kept administrators attached to the faculty. To manage the neoliberal university, highly paid administrators have been hired, having no attachment to the faculty. They can make ruthless decisions. Administration grows even as the number of full-time faculty shrinks. Someone has to manage the adjuncts. The president of ASU makes $1 million a year. Some of that is commission for hitting certain benchmarks set by the Arizona Board of Regents. Reeser noted a McDonaldization function he called imposion. Fancy and expensive new dormitories at ASU resemble resort hotels. New recreation centers and swimming pool compete with fancy fitness clubs to attract customers. College sports resemble the big leagues. Sports has always been an essential element of the university life, but since the 1970s, some have become really big business. The ASU football coach makes 3 times what President Crow makes. Market value for a college football player is estimated at $178,000 a year. But besides scholarships, college athletes get a tiny stipend ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 a year. Grants for research still bring in millions from the government, but more comes from industry. The ASU Research Park is not an incubator where people try to be successful in technology. This is where people who are successful with technology come to get stuff done. It basically is a profit center. Or even nonprofit universities become corporate entities. They seek to profit from inventions, discoveries, and the intellectual work of faculty. ASU protects its trademarks to the point of prohibiting one from publishing their images to critique university branding. The university has more lawyers than I do, and thus I could not be able to publish this trademark. In the graduation infomercial for the New American University, President Crow proudly proclaims students to be our products. Someone from the Chamber of Commerce in Ohio bluntly revealed the not so hidden curriculum when he said, "The business community is a consumer of the educational product. Students are the educational product. They're going through the education system so they can be an attractive product for the business to consume and hire as a workforce in the future." After his presidency, General Dwight Eisenhower became president of Columbia University. In his inaugural speech, he meant to compliment the faculty by saying how it was always good to see an employee of the university get recognized. A professor interrupted him and said, "Excuse me, sir, but the faculty are not employees of the university. They are the university." Eisenhower loved that comment. However, after 2,500 years, the days of the faculty being the university are over. We are service employees hired to produce products for the university corporation to sell. It is in this environment that the designation of Hispanic serving institutions was established. Of course, they got their branding down from the very start. An overview of the briefings from the states of California, Texas, Arizona, Florida, with several colleges and universities designated as Hispanic serving institutions. There is a complete absence of descriptions of institutional climate. Measuring the racial, gender, or class environment is not part of the metrics used to determine the success. Metrics are affordability, institutional capacity, retention and transfer, and workforce preparation. Institutional capacity is increasing financial support for students, making sure these institutions are eligible for Title V grants, activities, and online environment, grant outcomes. An overview of the institutional capacity does not include the diversity of faculty, and there is a complete absence of faculty in the leadership. A recent article, "Where Do Latinas and Latinos Earn Social Science Doctorates?" by Frank Fernandez found, and I quote, "No relationship between attending community college and the type of university where a Latina or Latino social scientists earn their PhD. However, he did find that Latinas and Latinos who earned their bachelor degrees from Hispanic serving institutions had a higher risk of earning doctorates from less research intensive universities. This institutional pathway may be beneficial for increasing the number of Latinos and Latinas who earn a social science doctorate degrees. However, it may be problematic for preparing future faculty members." There was the establishment of a learned society devoted to Hispanic serving. The leadership here, as well as in much of their activities, is focused on the administration. As you can see, there is nothing specifically related to learning about relevant history or social issues impacting Latinx communities. Reviewing the goals, one might ask, are Latinx faculty included? Or are grant monies and research aimed at the disciplines with the least number of Latinx faculty? Are Latinx faculty relegated to the serving as of role models and mentoring? All of which are important, but are not rewarded in the same way as grants and research. 3 years ago, Excelencia in Education awarded ASU its seal of Excelencia to acknowledge the university's work towards supporting Hispanic students' journeys to bachelor's degree. Designation has been important in obtaining grants from the National Science Foundation to broaden participation in STEM. However, the faculty that are principal investigators are not Latinx, and these faculty are in departments that have not done well in recruiting faculty of color and are not pressured to do so. While there is a statement about the significance of Latinx faculty in serving as role models and mentors, and a recognition that the number of faculty are not representative of the Latino student body, yet the recruitment and retention of Latinx faculty is not a metric used in evaluating programs or the distribution of government funds. High priority of aims for students includes the degrees and careers in engineering and computer science. Yet at ASU, efforts for recruiting Latinx faculty in the sciences is not a primary focus. Instead, faculty diversity is found in the humanities and in the social sciences. Well, it would seem that Latinx have made some progress in becoming faculty members. A closer look at the data reveals that Latinx are losing ground. The good news is that Latinx have doubled their presence as professors and instructors, increasing 2 to 4% of all faculty between the years of 2003 to 2013. But the bad news is that the growth of Latinx as a percentage of the profession has lagged dramatically behind the growth of the students on campus. During the same time frame, the percent of Latino students in US higher education increased from 11% to 17%. As a result, the ratio of Latino students to Latinx faculty has increased from 80 to 1 to 90 to 1. Only about half of the Latino faculty are full-time, and about 60% of those are tenured or on tenure track. Faculty teach, conduct research, and provide service through community and student support. However, institutions rely more on full-time and tenured faculty to make these important contributions, and Latinos should increasingly be among these ranks. Latino faculty were slightly less likely to be employed as full-time faculty. In 2013, 49% of Latino faculty were employed full-time and 51% were enrolled part-time, and this trend has continued. This argument is stated as follows in the Hispanic Serving Institutions material. The cultivation of Latinos into faculty ranks will not likely change quickly, as the pipeline of Latino graduate students and graduate assistants is not robust. That's a direct quote. I've heard this argument for 40 years. The reality is that faculty with a PhD, not from the Ivy Leagues or from the most prestigious universities, are not considered for these positions. This is unlikely to change given the finding that I previously reported that students earning a BA or a BS from a Hispanic serving institution are unlikely to receive a PhD from a research-intensive university. We need to change the education game's rules, revise the rules, and change the status quo. I hope we can discuss this during the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Extra credit, people. Ask some questions. This was very illuminating knowledge that you shared with us, Mary. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Especially,
And I also found your report that you wrote very significant, and that's what got me to looking very closely at the Hispanic serving institutions and some of the problems with who are gaining the benefits from that in terms of faculty.
yes, just how you framed it, you know, that a lot of these grants that are being obtained under the Hispanic Serving Institution classification, they're going to colleges and departments that really do not hire minority faculty. And the ones that are really graduating these students, getting them ready for a better future, are lacking resources. And that's very, very disturbing.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. Dr. Romero, the first question we've got is, how do you propose that Latinx graduates can change the status quo?
Well, I think they need to put some energy on or pressure on administrators to include different metrics on how success is measured and how inspired research and their other use of their key phrases, how that would include knowing about our history, knowing about social issues, knowing this, and figuring out ways to include Latino faculty that are engaged in mentoring and supporting students to be rewarded in the same ways that white faculty that are receiving grants because they are coming from a Hispanic serving institution are receiving the benefits from this. So it seems to me that the Latinx faculty are doing a lot of the behind the scenes work, but they're not getting any acknowledgement or any benefits from it for their own careers.
Thank
or their
you.
ability to research.
The second question we've got so far says, thank you, Dr. Romero, for your presentation. The question is, how do we go about recruiting more Latinx faculty in the context of department level hostility?
There really has to be a buy-in by the administration. I know at ASU, we just recently got a new provost that folks are very excited about because she is a Latina. The previous provost was a white male, and he never put any pressure on the hard sciences to have any kind of diversity focus in their faculty hires. It was always assumed that this is something that only happens in the humanities and the social sciences. And of course, we need to continue the work that we're doing in the humanities and the social sciences, but we also can't be doing all the work for the university in those areas. The hard sciences need to be doing it as well, or there has to be some other kind of compensation to us that are doing the diversity work. Because the universities in themselves can't continue to function by promoting the same kind of policies that they do with the hard sciences. For instance, I give you an example on my campus. There was a submission for a STEM grant, and the principal investigators got the feedback that there's no intersectionality at all in their grant. They're not taking it into consideration, and they were quite surprised that they hadn't included me, since I had written books on intersectionality, that they hadn't even asked that I serve as a consultant on their grant. So it was only as an afterthought and sort of as a condition of their getting the money that I was consulted. So it is important to the outside grant funding agencies what the diversity is like on a campus, but the departments that are doing the diversity work are not being compensated for it.
Thank you for that. There's a question in the chat as well about one of your slides in your presentation, Dr. Romero, that specifically spoke to the Hispanic Institute. And there's a question as to whether you could reshare the slide and provide a little bit more of an elaboration on it.
The person to give me any background on what that was.
It was a slide about the Hispanic Institute, about the program. And they just wanted to hear a little bit more about an elaboration about that. Maybe it was regarding the HSI status that ASU has.
That's not it. Was this it?
I believe so.
Okay, when issues of diversity are spoken of either in terms of students or in terms of faculty, it is always presented as a cultural enrichment and experience for the entire student body and improvement of the university overall. But yet, they are not compensated for this representation. So even in the campuses that have been designated as Hispanic serving institutions does not necessarily mean that they have a high number of percentage of Latino faculty employed.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions that are very similar, so I will raise it in one question. It seems to be asked a few times. Folks are wondering whether you can address how the McDonaldization of higher education can be addressed and how it can be reversed.
It gradually occurred as the government quit funding higher education. And we can see this sort of as a historically, we can see as universities were no longer only for the elite, and they were opened up for white working class males after World War II, and then eventually to women, to minorities, to the present, that there has been a continuing decrease in government funding to the universities. And so in response, universities have developed a corporate model to survive. I don't know how your funding at Cal State is works, but at ASU, every department basically has to support itself, and they do it primarily through online teaching because they use less resources to do online teaching than in-person teaching. And as the years have gone by, first of all, they started by having every major have an online component to it so that you can get an entire major without ever going to campus or to any of the 4 campuses. The next step they took was taking a certain percentage, which keeps getting higher and higher, of the amount that the unit makes every year. And that's what they use to for funding. And as we see that, I'm sure this is true. You can see it particularly true in your large universities where the nicest buildings are always the law school and the business schools. And usually the buildings that are in the worst condition are the humanities and the social sciences, and frequently the one that houses social work. So where the money is being spent is an issue. Also, over the years, we have seen a growing number of administration positions, and administrators are not in the classroom. They're not doing the work. They're administrating. They're making enormous amounts of money, much more than what faculty are making. And I think that it's a very serious issue that individuals are being placed in positions of being administrators and not perceived as being part of the faculty anymore, nor do they expect to go back to the faculty, unless, of course, if they fail in their position as an administrator.
Thank you. There's another question in their chat about the difference between research-centered and learning-centered institutions and how faculty, staff, students can determine which one their institution identifies with. How should teaching and learning behavior shift to best support students and stakeholder success, especially if the institution is operating as one when they should be operating as the other?
Your research-intensive universities focus a lot of their energy on bringing in huge grants. And when they bring in these grants, that's where the faculty with PhDs that are on tenure track or tenured faculty, that's where their energy is being placed. So the teaching in most cases, in those departments will be graduate students or part-time faculty, adjunct faculty, those faculty that are not on tenure track. Whereas a teaching college, which also have seen a shift over the last 15 years that even schools that do not offer that many PhD programs and a few master's programs have also started to put pressure on faculty to bring in grant money, because again, they're not getting the same government support that they had in the past. And as we keep increasing the number of administrators and charging and paying them twice as much as they pay the faculty, that money's got to come from somewhere.
Thank you for that. One other question, well, there's kind of a thread of questions similar to this regarding whether you believe that there needs to be more Latinx in positions of power, such as department chairs, in order to put pressure on universities to support the population that it serves.
I think it takes more than just the individual, it takes the culture, because I don't think that we have suffered that immensely by not having administrators of color, because the ones that we have are under the same pressure to act like their white colleagues if they're going to keep the job. We need to do is to change the culture of the university and the metrics in which faculty and administrators are rewarded. So for instance, at ASU, I'm in a, or was before I retired, in a program that offered a PhD. There's no incentive whatsoever for me to work with graduate students. The money, the additional money that comes in is through grants, it's through publishing. And even as much lip service as teaching is given, it's not rewarded in the same way. So if you want to improve teaching at a university, you have to reward it in the same way that you would do rewarding service or rewarding grants, getting grants.
Thank you. So a follow-up to that, what do you see as the role of labor unions in affecting the kind of change that you're advocating?
I think it's very important. And I think that it's unfortunate that when the labor union was strong in this country, faculty didn't sign on immediately and are still dragging their feet because they want to proclaim that they are not workers, they're not employees, but they're faculty. They are the university. And that's just not the case. Maybe it was at one time, but certainly is not now. I've only been at a few universities that had a union, and the last one was San Francisco State. I found it was a difficult situation for administrators, which I think was a good thing. I think that it was very important that when faculty do have to confront the administration, that they have the backing of the union when they do it, rather than as one person having to confront their lawyers. It evens out the playing field a bit. And I think it is very important in terms of negotiating better terms, not only for faculty, but also for students. Because students have a lot to gain from teachers with expertise and networks in writing letters of recommendation and so forth. I've had undergraduate students wanting to go to graduate school, and they've gone through their entire undergraduate degree never having a faculty member as teaching the class. They only have TA, graduate students. And that's a problem.
That actually leads into another question that's in the chat regarding what your thoughts are about the best way that you can mentor Hispanic or Latinx students to look towards a life in academia.
That's difficult for me to answer because I've known a completely different type of university. I got my PhD in 1980, And even when I was a graduate student, the kind of university that my mentors were teaching at was not the university that I entered. And the conditions of the university I've seen over the last 40 years continue to erode. I think the worst part is the lack of faculty governance that's occurring because of the enormous number of administration that are attempting to make all the decisions, and making the decisions not necessarily in favor of better education for the betterment of a community, but in terms of selling individuals promise of a successful career and making lots of money. And I'm not so sure that we can make that kind of promise today because of the cost of education. I think that we need to get more funding available for graduate students of color. We need to get more opportunities for them. I've seen too many times where departments will expect the students of color to try and get monies available through associations that have special programs for underrepresented students. And they figure you can apply to that, the white students can't, so they use their resources for the white students, and they get the students of color to apply for these other types of resources. And again, that kind of approach benefits white students. It doesn't benefit increasing the number of students of color. I also think that we got to bring in meritocracy back into the university. I can't tell you how many times I've experienced being on the job market when somebody has simply said to me directly or indirectly, don't bother to apply because our first cutoff is done on the basis of where you got your PhD, not what you've published and or the impact of what you've published. And I did not go to the UC system. I did not go to Princeton. I did not go to Yale. I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder. And sociology department in Boulder is not sociology department at UW-Madison, for instance. So we need to change the rules. In the research that I've done on Latino faculty, I have found that most of the Latino faculty from my generation that went to the UC system not because they were mentored well, but because it was the closest university to where they were living at, and they applied to it. So
Thank you for that.
A part of that is, mentoring high school students and their parents about there's a hierarchy in higher education that we never talk about.
So related to that, there's also a question about how you see whether there's a role for academic senate or faculty senate on campuses. What work would you like to see done in those spaces to more adequately address the loss of Latinx faculty and inequitable ratios of Latinx faculty to students, as well as, is this a site where we can clarify the current conditions of faculty labor?
Again, I think that in the regulations or guidelines for promotion and tenure, as well as for raises, that there has to be a metric for mentoring students of color, for supporting students of color, for helping them network, teaching in these areas, serving on committees that enforce diversity. And these cannot be rewarded in the same manners as other types of committee work, because white faculty can claim that as well, but what they're doing is always treated as, is given more value than our work in diversity. And yet the university as a whole is getting a lot from that. When they apply for grants, they have to say how many faculty of color that they have in the entire university, not necessarily in that particular unit that's applying. They want to know, you know, the number of students of color, so they can make themselves look very good on paper, but not necessarily are they actually doing the work. And, you know, the white faculty that do get grants, I think, have an obligation to hire and train students through their grants and give them research experience, and to be there to write letters of recommendation. And they also have to start promoting diversity hires within their own unit.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. I just wanted to make note of our time. It's at 12:56, and just wanted to give you another opportunity. Dr. Romero, if you had any final thoughts you wanted to share with us.
As I said in my beginning and opening comments, I was very impressed with the information that you do make available on the website that you created for the center. I think that the center has a lot of potential, and it's already has visibility. And I think that, and I hope that the faculty uses this to obtain more resources and improve the situation at the university. It certainly is a great resource for students and the students that are there, as well as high school students who are trying to consider where they want to go or who they want to work with. Also for students who may be looking to transfer from a community college to a university. I think it's an important site. So I hope that your recruiters are taking notice of this work, as well as your administrators, because it's giving a very important message to the larger community about what's happening at Cal State Sacramento.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Romero. I just want to
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a couple of updates to folks. We're going to go ahead and